Fashion is all about the here and now. What the must-have one year can look extremely dated the next. Go back on the fashion timeline for a look at some of yesterday's most memorable collections. With a year in fashion. 2007 was a milestone in the fashion industry's acceptance of environmental and social causes. Election fever hit the American press early in an attempt to distract from the ongoing war, while China arrived as a new superpower. And the iPhone made it to the top of everyone's wish list. 2007 also marked the passing of notable fashion designers Gianfranco Ferré and Liz Claiborne. Familiar faces from the fashion scene, Isabella Blow and Anna Nicole Smith. And from the world stage, Lady Bird Johnson, Kitty Carlisle Hart, Brooke Astor, and Norman Mailer. Fashion victims Paris Hilton, Nicole Richie, and Lindsay Lohan all took a turn in prison blues, while Britney just struggled. The millennium, no longer so new, allowed 2007 trends to embrace both technology and luxury. Giorgio Armani's star-studded London extravaganza brought together celebrities and performers from around the globe to raise awareness of the AIDS crisis.
Armani's extravaganza was called One Night Only, and it really was one night only. I've never seen a night like it.
Olivier Theyskens made his highly anticipated debut at Nina Ricci. Renowned designers celebrated big anniversaries. Christian Dior toasted 60 years. Paul Gaultier turned 30. Ferragamo celebrated an impressive 80 years of success begun simply with a shoe. And Chado Ralph Rucci marked 25 years of design. The biggest inspiration for the year, the Costume Institute's landmark Poiret exhibition.
He was very much acknowledged the king of fashion in his day.
Plus, the industry's most powerful woman. And more from the Year in Fashion 2007. The Spring 2007 collections offered a diverse array of trends, from the romantic to the sporty, and from retro all the way to futurism. But while there may not be one prevailing mood to define the season, we focused on a few key looks to help you update your wardrobe. This season's most compelling trend is distinctly forward-looking, technology-driven, and a little bit sci-fi. Details evoke robotic articulation, Tron-like computer circuitry, and sexy cyber goddesses. But rather than being all shiny metallic artifice, these futuristic fashions, while not all wearable, are pushing the boundaries of form and function, utilizing advanced textiles, and, at Hussein Chalayan, even robotics that morph the clothing before your very eyes.
People like Hussein Chalayan and Nicolas Gasquier at Balenciaga spoke to the idea of looking forward in fashion and thinking about the ways in which not only will we look, but perhaps how fashion might function for us.
For the more traditional, fashion is also rendered in more classically romantic visions this season. Designers deck their designs in ruffles, bows, and sculptural flowers. But rather than appearing crafty or dowdy, these charming details are meticulously crafted and perfectly sophisticated.
A lot of people have been doing clothing that has surface detail like rosettes made out of gathered fabric, or ruffles, or pleating, like elaborate pleating. So it's kind of couture-ish details that look hand done in a very fine way.
Dance and ballet-inspired clothing is on point for spring. Designed with movement in mind, these garments move comfortably and gracefully with the body. Perfect not only for dancing, but for busy modern life.
talk about what do people want. Everyone wants to have their cake and eat it too. So you want to be sexy, but you want to be comfortable. And the people who manage to do that best in the world are dancers and athletes. And when I see these dancers and choreographers on the street from the school, they look so sexy, but comfortable, modern, never costumey.
The layers that were a key look for fall will continue into spring, only in ethereal and fluid fabrics. Whether perfectly prim or truly deconstructed, light layers capture the breezy freshness of a new spring.
I think the big trend is about lightweight, airy fabrics, because all of the layering that we had for fall that looked so depressing and heavy suddenly looks like as beautiful as the petals of a flower opening. And so for spring, I think it's going to be wonderful.
Sometimes the best fashion moments happen off the runway. In New York, Marc Jacobs really put his BlackBerry to work this season, reaping an even larger than usual celebrity harvest.
I think Marc Jacobs' show pulled probably more celebrities than anybody else.
Marc Jacobs is dope.
They're coming more and more, fighting their way through the crowds. I mean, it was a bit like a kind of Oscars night.
The mood was somber at Vera Wang as attendees discovered her father had passed away earlier that morning. A few hours later, things were more jubilant as Ralph Rucci celebrated his 25th year in the business.
I'm still in a state of becoming. I haven't even touched upon what I need to.
Kevin Costner had the week's craziness all summed up.
I've been to two, so it's not like I'm a really experienced guy with this, but I like it when the lights go out and the music starts up and the clothes go flashing by. It's a little startling for somebody who hasn't seen it before to realize it's done in 15 minutes.
New York witnessed Ralph Rucci enter his 25th year in fashion. Rucci refused to take time away from the pre-show prep of his summer presentation to reflect on how he would like to be remembered.
I'm not going anywhere. I can't do that. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still in a state of becoming. I haven't even touched upon what I need to.
Ralph's silhouettes are always absolutely stunning, and he doesn't want the hair to interfere the silhouette. So this season we decided to put a pretty big braid, and it's really slicked and really finished and really couture.
An appropriate beauty choice, considering Rucci presented his fall couture and spring ready-to-wear Chado Ralph Rucci collection simultaneously.
This is the 25th year anniversary collection, and I looked at the lineup a few hours ago and said, there are seeds that I planted 25 years ago that I'm still trying to work out. So I don't, go to another civilization or a time period for a theme for each season. It's the rigor of what we've always worked on and just trying to take it further, and it's much more subtle in that way.
I think that Ralph Rucci is the most incredible designer working in America today. He's really the only one doing these astonishing couture techniques and innovating new techniques, and then to the extent that it's possible, translating them into the ready-to-wear as well. These clothes are just a technical tour de force.
What's so magical about Ralph Rucci's work is that it is so near to perfection that I think a designer can strive to be. His line and cut and tailoring has really perfect precision.
He really understands that fashion can be art, but flattering, beautiful, and wearable at the same time. A lot of designers can produce art, but it belongs in a museum, not in real life. If you're rich enough that your real life means you can afford Ralph Rucci, then you can't be better dressed.
I am Ralph Rucci's #1 fan. I wear his clothes all the time now. The work is perfection. It's artistic, and it has its own genius that has nothing to do with what the trends are or what anyone else is doing. It's art, fashion on its highest level, pure.
A certain awareness began to grow when I began to see that the clothes were accepted because of their sincerity and because of our passion. In the design side, I'm still always feeling that there's much more to discover. By no means do I feel like I've arrived anywhere.
One of London's biggest cheerleaders summed up the buzz surrounding this season's Fashion Week.
I think this London Fashion Week is turning out to be one of the best we've had, and I would say in a decade. And it really brings to mind for me the era when we had Alexander McQueen and John Galliano. There is such a buzz, and there's really a lot of talent. Gareth Pugh is just one. He's outrageous, and he's not afraid to take risks. We've also got Christopher Kane doing his first collection, and again, a genuine talent. Beaver back on the catwalk. I mean, Kate Moss designing for Topshop. You know, everything suddenly seems to be happening. And I ran into Patrick McCarthy from Women's Wear Daily. I mean, one of the most influential fashion trade journalists in the world. He hasn't been to London for 10 years. And he was just saying, wow, you know, this place is alive with energy. And I think the pendulum swung and it's back to London again.
It was an extravaganza, the likes of which London has never seen, as Giorgio Armani brought his Emporio Armani collection to London Fashion Week for one night only.
Armani's extravaganza was called One Night Only, and it really was one night only. I've never seen a night like it, because it was like the whole of Hollywood had sort of suddenly decamped to Earl's Court. Leonardo DiCaprio in one place, 50 Cent, Beyonce, Bono. I mean, it was just Brian Ferry, Kim Cattrall, Ashley Judd. It was just fantastic. And there was a cast of about 100 models. Really a brilliant evening.
London,
because it is a city that for me it's a very eclectic city, very diversified. There's a different way of doing things, of thinking. When in London, you can be yourself. This is the beauty of London.
Armani also introduced the collection he designed for the Product Bread campaign. The initiative was founded by Bono and Bobby Shriver to raise awareness and funds for the AIDS crisis in Africa.
Perché ho avuto un rapporto piacevolissimo, bellissimo con Bono, che mi ha convinto che era l'occasione per essere partecipe di questa istituzione, di questo modo di aiutare l'Africa e non solo l'Africa.
He's a very creative man, and we need creativity and imagination in the fight against AIDS. It's the greatest health emergency in 600 years. It's extraordinary how many lives it affects. There are nearly 40 million people on planet Earth with AIDS, and since, you know, it's really upsetting to me, but it delights me when people like Giorgio Armani get involved in the struggle.
Interspersed throughout the evening were musical performances from notable superstars.
Beyonce doing the most incredible gig, and all her dancers and singers are girls. Brilliant. And we had Brian Ferry, 50 Cent, and that amazing blind tenor, Andrea Bocelli. I mean, it was sensational.
This is great. I actually attended last year's show. You know, it was exciting. This is what made me make time on my schedule to be here tonight. You know, I expect to enjoy myself.
I think it's incredible. I think only Mr. Armani can pull something like this off and convince all of us to come to London after we have 2.5 more weeks to go in Fashion Week. But it's always a pleasure.
In Milan, Roberto Cavalli set Capri.
It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. And it actually happens. People get dressed to go there, and it's hilarious and it's funny, and we're going to bring it to you.
Pop star Prince held court in the front row of the brand new Versace Teatro.
And this is a dream that Donatella and Gianni used to talk about many, many years ago.
And Bell Staff gave fashion editors a chance to enjoy art in a country famous for it.
This is the biggest exhibition ever made of Basquiat in Europe.
Just wear lipstick.
With Rufus Wainwright performing and ballroom dancers on the runway, Victor and Rolf raised the ante for Paris Fashion
Week. You know, we were sort of saying like, wow, it's a mix of like Ice Capades meets The Shining. You know, it was kind of like skater costumes, lots of stars.
Making her first appearance at Balenciaga, Janet Jackson and her beefy bodyguards became ubiquitous in the City of Light.
Honestly, I'm really at a loss for words. It was so breathtaking. I loved it. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was very sexy. We could keep walking around. But I thought it was very beautiful, very soft, very sexy. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Proving that less is more, Demi and Ashton showed up only at John Galliano's show. New York designer Stephen Burrows returned to the Paris runway for the first time since 1973.
I'm very excited about being in Paris. It's the first time. I tried once before, but it didn't happen. This time we got here.
Perhaps the season's true fashion moment was Hussein Chalayan's computer-controlled mechanical dresses.
So there's all mechanics like under the dress. After 25 seconds, the dress goes up and this zippers by itself.
Having passed the half-century mark himself, Jean-Paul Gaultier can no longer be called an enfant terrible. But there's no denying that as a fashion force, he is still one to be reckoned with. This season, he celebrated 30 years of creation under his own name with a mini runway retrospective.
It's amazing to see 30 years of a designer sort of all in one compact little package, and it really, I think, showed what Gaultier is strongest at, which is he has an amazing visual wit, and he loves the sort of like a sight gag in a way, those sailor stripes made out of feathers. It's sort of ingenious and really fun, and every piece was like a conversation piece, one way or another.
Gaultier was never formally trained as a designer, but apprenticed with Pierre Cardin in the early 70s before launching his signature collection in 1976. He's created memorable looks for feature films, including The Fifth Element. However, the designer's probably best known for his influence on fashion through his conical bra costumes for Madonna.
I thought for me, Jean-Paul Gaultier, I've lived those years of coming to see the shows, and he brought back nightlife for me, because the music associated so much with what that particular year was, and he did that so well, and he was always so much fun, and we'd always see him at the club afterwards and the parties. So the clothes signified a different time of life in which how you remember that dress and remember that song. I thought the clothes, the retrospect was beautifully done. We got it.
In 1996, Gaultier fulfilled a lifelong dream of opening an haute couture house. Then in 2003, the designer was offered the chance to helm Hermès, but his heart remains with his signature collection.
Gaultier is such a master of wit and humor, and he's done so much for fashion over the years, and I especially enjoyed looking at the retrospective that he showed us, and I think it's so easy for us in fashion to forget how much a great designer like Jean-Paul has accomplished, and there were so many remarkable looks there, the Madonna bra and the tartans, incredible, impeccable tailoring. It was just a joy to see, and I I think he's, you know, a master of his art, and we're very lucky to have him in fashion.
While models have always appeared to live the cliche of never being too rich or too thin, this season a debate erupted over just how skinny they should be.
The industry should really try not to use models that they know are unwell or that everybody suspects are unwell. But I don't think that because somebody is thin that they necessarily are unhealthy. And I think it's, you know, it's getting that line right that's really important.
We never use anorexic girls because they look horrible. Huh? They are frightening. The new girls from the East, they have a very narrow build. So the skeleton alone is much lighter than the skeleton of a girl from 20 years ago. It's very strange, huh? Because they are not that skinny.
The issue spurred headlines as the models weighed in.
It goes like, oh, skinny girls, model, skinny, na. Come on, guys. Let's talk about everything else, you know, important. I'm skinny, but my mother, she used to be very skinny. That's her body, that's my body. I'm 22 now and I'm still skinny. I don't think I'm gonna get fat, never.
Fashion isn't really reality. It's kind of a dream world, and I think that models are models. It's our job to be skinny, and I don't think we're doing anything wrong. We're all eating.
It's important to acknowledge that any type of eating disorder is unhealthy, but whether you're considered underweight or overweight, each individual is different.
Hi, I'm Shalom Harlow. I am a fashion model extraordinaire, and we're going to be bopping around the Lower East Side in New York City today, checking out some eco-fashion boutiques. And here we're at Kate's, our first stop. So maybe we should pick out a couple things, 1 or 2 pieces to try on, and I'll do a little show for y'all, okay? Oh, I feel like a little, you know, Italian movie star.
I was gonna say orchid pepper.
Yeah. And then this great pocket. It's so perfect, isn't it? That is beautiful. That is gorgeous. It's interesting that we're in a place now where we can consider organic clothing and organic fibers the same way we would organic groceries. You know, that it's not only is it healthy for the planet because we're not putting chemical fertilizers and pesticides into our soil and waterways, but it's also we're putting that goodness into our bodies and onto our bodies now.
But I love the little scalloped edge and the swing in the skirt. Mm-hmm. Really just sort of have fun with it.
It's got that Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Oh, I love it. It's so cute. Makes you so happy to know where it all comes from.
Right, exactly. So Modal, Tencel, Lyocell, it's kind of all, you know, based on plant cellulose and wood fibers. So let me give you some plastic, Kate. All right.
And I'll use my little bag.
Oh, perfect.
Thanks for having us in your store. And I will be back.
Okay.
And we're here at a boutique called Narnia. Let's see what we can find in there. Ah, wouldn't you just love this to be your closet? So one of the big bonuses about vintage shopping is that it's essentially recycling. And by recycling, reusing old designs that have so much personality and are complete originals, it's almost 100% net saving, energy saving. So you're not spending money, you're not spending energy consuming to create a new product. You're simply reusing something that already exists. So this is the most sustainable way to shop. Little tutu. My ballet days are coming back, having ballet flashbacks. Oh, that's a gorgeous little piece. Go over anything. Oh, I love that. I think that has to be tried on, definitely.
Super easy, cotton,
breezy for the summer. All right, folks, that's it. Thanks for joining us, and if you want to meet me back here in a few months, we'll do a fall version if you want.
For the cold months ahead, designers offer up new style options that allow us to creatively express our personalities. Not looking to completely reinvent yourself or your winter wardrobe? Just a few select items can make all the difference.
Only, fashion victims go out and buy brand new things every season. That says nothing about personal style. And that's what this season is very much about. It's all about choosing the looks that are right for you.
The more reserved will be pleased to hear that it's finally hip to be modest. Tailored white shirts and smartly fitted silhouettes are bringing a sophisticated sexy back.
Time for a certain polish and a refinement and a sophistication, and I also like the idea of this sort of fetishist, this fetish obsession almost for perfection.
This idea of sort of the return to this really beautiful sense of elegance, almost like old Hollywood in a way.
Accessories are key to capturing the new refinement. Perfectly paired essentials offer a definite polish. The head-to-toe coordination of matching bags and shoes are right on target for this season's extreme elegance. For the ultimate sophisticate, the accoutrements make the outfit. Gloves are also a must. Slipping on elbow length will allow you to be sexy and demure. A belt, whether wide, narrow, or a shape all its own, reigns in the look and emphasizes a sleeker silhouette.
Oh gosh, you have to buy a belt to cinch your waist, show your waistline off. Nothing is hip slung anymore. The focus is on the waist.
Necessity is clearly the mother of winter's innovative fabrics. High-tech materials not only give traditional classics a futuristic charm, but are also an ideal alternative to foul-weather gear.
There's been a lot of luxury in the fabrics, between the furs and the leathers, and very innovative surfaces.
He would be pleased. He would be pleased. But not only about richness or glamour, about the behavior, not only of his children, but also the grandchildren.
For Wanda Ferragamo, seeing subsequent generations carry on the name of her late husband is a satisfying experience, especially as the family-owned house celebrates its 80th anniversary and prepares to become a public company.
I think it's an important move for Ferragamo because it gives us the possibility of really maintaining our ability to still be a family business, but at the same time be able to invest in new ways for Ferragamo for the future.
We are also at a point where I think the company has grown tremendously, and we have to look to the future in a new dimension. He was really always telling us that he couldn't wait for us to grow up and to start on other departments also. You know that this was one of his dreams, so I guess that more than surprised, I hope he would be very pleased.
In 1937, Salvatore Ferragamo chose Firenze as the place to set up shop. The then 39-year-old shoemaker was drawn to the location for its beauty and traditions of noble leatherwork.
Ferragamo shoes means something different compared to many other shoes that are now on the market, because we still follow some of the production and product development phases were set up by our founder.
From the design studio, the sketch is handed off to the technical drawer, or modelista.
So the modelista transformed this scratch into something like this. The modelista worked on the last. The final result, everything's cutted. Every single piece of the shoes is cut in with the right millimeters, the right proportion. They move through third phase, which is the giunteria. Giunteria is where the leather are cut. With this tool, it's cut based on the pattern the modelista developed. The materials, we use the best leathers, the best leather we can find on the market. It's expensive, yes, but cost is not something that should move creation. To make shoes, we need to have the last, the heels, the inner sole, and these components, we receive them from suppliers, and little by little, we put together a shoe. The upper is nailed on the last. The other really important part is the heel, which is almost at the end of the process, the way the heel is nailed to the upper. With high heels mainly, it's so dangerous if it gets broken, so it has to be very careful. Our fabrics are natural materials like leather. They need to take the shape of the last, which means the shape of the foot.
The shoes remain on the last for 3 to 4 days, and without this drying period, the results would be substandard.
What will happen? That the material will stretch back, which means whoop, the point of the shoes will go up. And if you can do a good shoes or not a good shoes, it depends from you. You have control on this. You can cheat on your customer, or you can provide the true value. And we have no choice. We know just one way.
I'm always looking forward into the future, and what better way to celebrate another anniversary than with a new collection?
To celebrate 60 years of Christian Dior, the legendary couture house turned their normally exuberant show into a full-blown extravaganza.
It was a spectacular, that's for sure. It had this sort of very high glamour, high retro look to it, but it seemed so formal and so mannered that, I don't know, I sort of felt like it fell somewhere in the middle between real clothes and high concept.
The concept began backstage with hair and makeup.
We are taking elements from the 40s, keeping it very strong, but very fresh, very modern.
We are doing 2 hairstyles. One is the hair down, which kind of is inspired by 40s glamour, kind of Veronica Lake hair. And then the second do is, it's an updo that kind of evokes the 40s, but it's not rolled, it's not literal.
Very contemporary. Very contemporary. If you take the hair and makeup away, there are beautiful pieces of considered design, which I think women have been shortchanged from for a long time.
I really loved that lime greeny yellow color. There were a couple of things in that color I loved, and then also all the origami type dresses, like the white one I thought was really beautiful, and there was another green one in there that was kind of pleated that was gorgeous.
I love the mix of tradition and cyberspace kids. So what you saw there was, in fact, a bag that was incredibly fashion, but produced in a way that only a luxury house could produce. It's very rare that you find a fashion statement, but produced at the highest quality of a couture bag. Very rare.
I saw him backstage, and I said, the other day, I said, so what's the difference between last season and this season? And he was like, well, and he said, I have to be very diplomatic. He said, I was given more space. He is, you can say, he's like one of 2 or 3 guys who really qualifies as a genius in this business. Karl Lagerfeld, Azzedine Alaïa, John Galliano. So So it's really, you know, people who doubt, you know, a couple years ago people were going, oh, John, move on. We're so tired of all these baggy, weird, over-the-top clothes. John can do anything he wants. But he also is like a designer. You don't tell him to do it. You trust him to do it when it's right to do it.
As the editor-in-chief of Vogue, Anna Wintour was instrumental in Galliano's move to the house of Dior.
John at that time was like so many of those extremely talented British designers. I mean, they have all the talent, but they don't have the business support behind them. And once, you know, he had that through LVMH, I mean, there was absolutely no stopping him.
Well, I'm here to carry the torch for Mr. Dior. I've been here 10 years, which is the tenure of Monsieur Dior himself. And really, he laid the blueprint for modern fashion as we know it today. And we're feeling a return to luxury, deluxe, cutting, fabrics, everything that was very soignette.
The minute I'm in one place, I forget the other place, because I couldn't do what I'm doing. No, I have no problem with that. Mais là, je trouve le bandeau un peu large. J'aimerais qu'on voit un peu plus ses cheveux à elle. I'm trained, so why not? And I like that. I would be bored with only one thing. It's like if a singer with only one song. No, I like to sing different tunes. And I like the idea that I have 3 personalities or no personality at all, I don't know. My Italian me is Fendi, Chanel is my vision of Chanel, and Lagerfeld is me. So I think it's quite interesting because they don't look the same at all. This is very impeccable, clean cut, beautifully made. I don't want to be pretentious, modern clothes. It's not at all in the classic sexy way. It's more an ambiguous seduction than a sexy attraction. I like all of the different parts of the job. There's not one. I love to be at home and sketch and do things like this, but it would be very stupid and dead if it wouldn't be done after as a dress or a suit or a jacket. There's not everyday sunshine. There are moments you don't like things, then you're not pleased, then you are pleased, then you're too pleased. So difficult to say. Sometimes things are easier, sometimes they come not that easily, sometimes you want to destroy everything. Today, a couture dress is as important as a jeans. Both have to be perfectly cut. And the price is, in a way, secondary. For me, it's like a crime to ask even for little money for something what's poorly made, because today with the machines, the design teams and all that, you can make inexpensive, because I hate the word cheap clothes, for a very affordable price. H&M thing opened my eyes for that. So, you know, for me it's easy because I do the most expensive in the world. So I can go there. If you do only that and you want to go to the more expensive, maybe it's more difficult. I don't know. But the way I spend my life designing and doing clothes, I can handle pretty well both ends. This is just a white shirt, but with a double collar. How are you? Very chic on her. Yeah, two colors, exactly. It's 2 shirts in one. Because, you know, some people say, oh, I would have invented the idea of invented blue jeans. I would be the inventor of the white shirt, but the white shirt existed before I was born. But I always make white shirts. I make all my shirts myself because I'm really a shirt freak. Fashion is about moving on. And this is what I like best. That's why I personally don't like retrospectives, anniversaries and all that. No, doing for doing. No credit on the past. What's interesting is what you do now and what you will do. What you have done, you can remember later.
Paris is one of the rare cities where the cosmopolitan stands side by side with the romantic. With Olivier Theyskens in his new position at the helm of Nina Ricci, the same union can now be expected at the French house.
At first I didn't thought about any change, I just put myself into a dream about a vision, and I'm really focused on a Ricci girl.
And nothing could be more poetic than using the natural beauty of the Jardin des Tuileries as a backdrop.
Tuileries is such a nice park, well, why don't we just show it?
Theyskens has an innate gift for illuminating beauty. Last year, the closing of Rochas left the Belgian super talent unemployed. Hope is now high that Theyskens will work his genius at Nina Ricci.
Today is going to be a drop-dead show. He did a very smart thing. He played off of the spiral turn of the L'air du Temps bottle and very subliminally worked it into almost all of his seam work. It was very modern, soft, very wearable, modern clothing.
So I wanted to work also on contrast with the perfume, bringing like grey urbanism and also contrasting modernity to Egeriac statements, like real elegant things. So it's very interesting to bring contrast in the brand.
He's such a refined, poetic being, and I think that his clothes are, you know, it was so whimsical, elegant, so there's always the most wonderful pieces that, you know, one wants to wear every day.
And he's like super talented, what can you say? He had so developed himself as Olivier in his own collection, and then he gave us a whole new direction at Rochas, and then now Nina Ricci is giving us another direction. I mean, he's a person that's filled with many songs.
My passion is to discover new ways of working, to create. And I've been working, discovering new cuts and all this. So I'm focusing myself directly into that. I want to make things naturally because I'm working on beauty, elegance, grace. So it comes naturally like that. It's an instinct.
It's a good first showing, and I think there'll only be greater things to come from him.
Known for lavish costume exhibitions, this season the Metropolitan Museum of Art mounted a show that celebrated Paul Poiret. Its notoriously glamorous red carpet celebration surpassed all that have come before.
This is Fashion Olympics. It's a great evening for people who love fashion to embrace it and just come out in all their gloriousness.
Paul Poiret is the king of fashion. When you look at his work, you understand what he brought, and you understand that fashion is a long story. And he brought a lot of keys that leads us to our modernity of today, so it's very important to do such an exhibition.
The exhibition was aptly titled King of Fashion.
So I think he was, you know, he was very much acknowledged the king of fashion in his day. I think he was by no means a sort of maverick designer working in obscurity.
Well, the idea for the show came back 2 years ago. There was a remarkable sale of Poiret's wife's clothes, Denise Poiret, in Paris. Seeing the clothes for the first time, we were completely taken aback by the modernity of the clothes. In the history of Poiret, people always remember him as the man who liberated women from corsets and hobbling women's legs, but not really as a modernist. So seeing these incredibly modern clothes, we felt was something fresh and something new to say about Poiret. It's about 3/4 of the shows a piece that Denise wore and were designed for Denise specifically.
There were several people around 1905, 1906, several designers who were advocating the freed female form, including Lucille, Madeleine Vionnet, Calosser, but Poiret is the one who's given credit for it.
He was the first of many things. He was the first designer to create perfumes, the first designer to expand into interior decoration.
So he was like a Ralph Lauren of his time. He was the first designer to do perfume, the first to do furniture, you know, interiors. It was the whole package. But sadly, he died penniless because they didn't have LVMH in those days.
One of the interesting aspects of Poiret is that the cuts are very simple. Really, all of the creativity and beauty is in the selection of materials, colors, and surface embellishments.
The richness of the fabric is also something so like it's stunning when you see the exhibition. Like you can't imagine. Yeah, those fabrics are so whole too. The colors, the quality of the silk, of the wool is really like, yes, really special.
The two major themes that always existed in his collections were somewhat parallel. One was classicism, harking back to Greco-Roman dress, and the other was Orientalism, looking at traditions from North Africa and the Middle East.
I think what this exhibition is doing is showing that fundamentally he was such an incredible modernist. You know, he cut these clothes. I mean, there are clothes from sort of 1908 here that are cut like T-shirts, literally, you know.
So it's really that, the idea that you don't need tricky or complex design to be seductive as fashion.
As the alleged subject of a certain book and now the focus of an upcoming documentary, it seems that the legend of Anna Wintour can't get any bigger. In 1988, the British-born fashion editor took the helm at American Vogue and quickly became the most powerful woman in fashion. Some even said too powerful, but her influence was too broad.
Well, I mean, I think that Vogue is, you know, such a brand, such an important brand that everything that I do connected with fashion, I feel reflects on the magazine. So obviously, helping and supporting designers and companies is part of what we do. We're very happy to do that, as much as we are happy when asked to advise a designer on the point of view of a collection or the direction that they might be taking their house. So, you know, obviously, first and foremost, our prime objective is hopefully to put out a wonderful magazine, but because of our connections and our experience and our expertise, as you will, I mean, we are, I hope, instrumental in supporting fashion in many, many different ways. As long as I get to pick up my tennis racket in the morning, I can do anything.